G'day, I'm Patrick from Douglas Fir Design. Welcome to the Router Bits. Ready to cut our chamfers. Like I said, I'm using a 15-degree chamfer bit. I've already placed one of them in the machine. For some reason I have two, so it's convenient that I can show you this one. The important thing when setting this up is you want to cut that chamfer along this whole face, on the whole height of the face, but it's important that the cut that you're making doesn't actually come through the top surface. The reason for that is we need to retain this top surface to consistently run along the fence the whole way through to get a cut which is the same depth the whole way. If we set this too deep, it's going to be working like a jointer, but there's going to be nothing to support the material on the other side, and we'll end up with the board coming through and then tilting to one side. I hope that makes sense. Another way to check that you are doing this correctly is put a grey lead line along the inside of the top edge that you're going to cut and set the height so that you think the top of this blade is just behind that top edge. Run this piece through just a centimetre or so and see that you've retained just a fraction of a millimetre of that grey lead line. Now, because you've only drawn it on this face, that will show you that the height is set correctly. If it's too low, you'll have too much of that line. If the bit is too high, you will have none of that line at all, and you'll notice that on the top you've actually cut away some of this top face, which is not what we want. Now, I've set this already. One other way to check is just to place the timber on the table, turn the bit so that the blade is at its furthest most point, so it's pointing directly towards you, and just look down the line of this fence to where the corner of that timber meets up with where the blade intersects, and make sure that blade is sitting just behind the edge of that timber. So I'll have a look at that now. I had this set up from when I cut some before, so it's set perfectly. Another thing to think about is grain direction. Now, on these boards it's very nice and easy to see, which is great because it means it's a little bit easier for me to explain it. I can see the streaks of the grain in this wood are very clearly pointing up in that direction. Ideally, I want that router blade to be running in this direction with that grain. So one way I like to imagine it is if these black lines that I've drawn were fingers coming out and you had a blade that was coming this way, it's going to lay those fingers flat and you're going to get a nice smooth cut. If you're coming the other way, it's going to grab those fingers and you're going to get tear out and get a really rough cut. So conveniently, when you're doing this, if you get the grain direction arranged correctly for the first pass, when you flip it around, the grain direction will still be correct in most cases, unless the grain in your timber is really all over the place. So you're not always going to be able to see that, but it will give you a better product in the end with smoother cuts, which means tighter joins, less leakage, all of that sort of thing. So the height is set, the fence is set, and we're ready to do some cuts. So you'll see as I'm doing these cuts, I do each chamfer all the way through once, and then I go back without changing any settings and do it all the way through again. And I find that second pass, it's not really cutting a whole bunch of new material off, it's just shaving down any imperfections, and it gives me a really nice clean cut with a really good clean surface. So I do that on all the pieces. I'm just going to run them through now.